Hello everyone, my name is AJ. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Golf 8 in the hot hatch diesel version, the GTD. When I first saw the Mark 8 Golf, the front headlamps kind of reminded me of that robot character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Do you guys see that? Anyway, here in the GTD, unlike the GTI or the GTE, we don't have a colored line running through the front. In the GTI it's red, in the GTE it's blue. Here it's just a silver color. It doesn't really pop out, but what does pop because of this is the LED light which runs through the middle. So when it's lit up, it really shines. You get the optional IQ lights, which are the matrix LED, which work really quite well. Further down, you have the very athletic GTI-inspired bumper with this crescent-shaped plastic element down here, honeycomb structure for the grille, and I really do like the placement of these LED fog lamps. Kind of has a pattern that resembles a checkered flag, again referencing the racetrack, kind of showing its athletic, sporty character. It's 1.78 meters wide, so not too different from the standard Golf. So, what do you guys think of the front design? All right, let's take a look at the side profile. The first thing that grabs your attention are these gorgeous 19-inch rims. As standard, you get smaller rims, but I do like the way these fill out the wheel arches with those red calipers inside. You can also get the DCC, which is the dynamic chassis control, which is a continuously varying suspension damping system, and I think it's a great addition for a hot hatch. The suspension itself is lowered by 15 millimeters. Along the side, I also like these large side skirts, which visually bring the mass of the car lower to the ground and give it a more athletic stance. Overall, the Golf GTD is 4.28 meters long. At the back, on the top, you'll notice there is a nice spoiler. It's quite subtle. I would say it's more cosmetic than functional, but again, enhances the sporty appeal of the GTD. Towards the middle, very horizontally drawn LED rear lights. And finally, the good news is at the bottom you also have real exhaust tips. For the GTI you have two single ports on either side. With the GTE you actually have, unfortunately, fake cosmetic exhaust tips on the bumper, where the real exhaust tip is further behind. But as you can see in the GTD, you have a dual port exhaust offset to the left side. I think it looks really cool. What about you guys? Let's take a look under the hood. So, what powers the Golf GTD? Well, it's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine, which makes 200 PS or metric horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. It's mated to a 7-speed DSG, which is a dual clutch transmission, going only to front-wheel drive with an electronic differential, which is basically a brake-based torque vectoring system. Inside the new Golf, well, the first thing that takes your attention is this completely digital cockpit. We'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute, but I also really like the driving position. So the seating position is really sporty. You have a lot of adjustment in the seat for height, of course moving it in and out. These are the sport seats with a nice tartan-like fabric checkered pattern, which is really comfortable with plenty of side bolstering to hold you in place and integrated head restraints. The materials and the build quality are, I would say, at par with the other competitors. Soft touch on the top of the dashboard, a nice honeycomb texture in the middle, but fit and finish is not the best, but at this price point, I think you're getting what you're paying for. The plastics are definitely harder the lower you go down, but it's not the end of the world. There's plenty of storage spaces as well in the doors, a nice sized glove box. Because of the shift-by-wire 7-speed DSG, there's not much going on in the middle in the center console, so you have some trays and some other areas to put your things. A nice bottle holder, which is also adaptive, and of course a center armrest with a cubby hole inside. The steering wheel has a lot of different functions. On the left-hand side, you have buttons to control the assistance systems. For example, you have a button here for the travel assist, which works really well, and I'll tell you more about that once we're driving. You also have volume control over here. On the right-hand side, you have buttons to navigate through the menu and the virtual cockpit, as well as things like the steering wheel heater, which is really great for a freezing cold day like this, and to change the track. Now, when I say buttons, when in reality, they're just one big panel on each side. And this looks nice, but there's some problems that I've noticed. For example, since you don't have different bifurcated buttons, right over here on the right side, you see there are 3 different functions really close to each other. And even after a week and a half of living with this car, I find myself hitting the wrong button when I want to maybe turn the steering wheel heater off, but then I change the track instead. Of course, this has a 7-speed DSG, so you have paddle shifters on the left and right, although they're quite small, and I wish they were a little bit bigger and maybe a different color, like similar to this chrome accent here, to make that a little bit more sporty feeling. The virtual cockpit is highly customizable. If you don't want this view altogether, you can press the view button on the steering wheel, and then, for example, there's one which has the driving data with, for example, your consumption, a navigation map, which is very useful if your co-passenger wants to connect their phone, so you don't have to worry about missing out on the navigation instructions. There's also a view with the assistance systems, and a very simplistic view as well. What I don't like so much, and what we can start with, are these sliders. First of all, the climate control system is very glitchy. A lot of times when I turn the car on, it just does not want to work. And no matter what I do to try to change the temperature or press the Klima hotkey button down here for changing the temperature, it just does not work at all. And it's not a matter of turning the engine off at the traffic sign to restart the system. You really have to let the whole system boot down, which takes a couple minutes, wait, and then boot it up again. So it can only happen when you've parked and come to a stop at a parking lot or at home or something like that. So I'm really unhappy with the fact that this climate system was glitching out many times. Another thing I don't like are that these sliders, while fine, I can live with them, but they're not backlit. So at night, it's really impossible to know what you're touching and where. And if you really want to change the temperature, you have to go to the climate menu down here and then start changing the temperatures again manually. The optional Harman Kardon audio system, which sounds really nice. You have different variations in the way you want the sound profile to be, either more surround or more focused, different EQs and boosting, different profiles of the sound itself. So really nice system that you will definitely enjoy. Further down, you have those shortcut buttons. Also a drive mode selector. You have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and Individual. And a couple USB-C ports down there and an inductive phone charging port as well. Things here in the back seat are pretty good. Getting inside is fairly easy. The seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'8" or about 1.73 meters. And as you can see, I have plenty of knee room. I can also slide my feet under the front seat. There are pouches here to keep your phone, a larger pouch down here, door pockets for your water bottle. The seats themselves are very well contoured. Enough under-thigh support, good support on the side. The angle is also not too reclined and not too upright. It's not the most spacious, but definitely for 4 people, it's very nice and comfortable. You have ISOFIX points on the outside 2 seats as well as the front co-passenger seat. You have a center armrest with cup holders, which you can drop down as a ski hatch. You also have a third climate zone with a couple of vents as well as a couple USB-C ports as well. So really well catered to back here in the seat. The trunk of the Golf GTD is 381 liters, which is a good amount. It's also very rectangular, so you can fit large suitcases very easily. You can flip the seats down in a 60-40 fashion along with that ski hatch. Although there are no switches over here, you have to use the switches on the seats themselves, so you have to reach over this parcel shelf. But on the good side, you can also drop the floor down so that you have more volume and more height to stack taller items. Alright, so here we are driving the Golf GTD. I've found some beautiful winding roads, actually one of my favorite spots back where I live here in the Odenwald. And let's start talking about how the GTD behaves. Of course, there's different driving profiles, and this is best suited, this road is best suited with the sport mode. So let's switch to that. Nice. The sound also really sounds kind of like a pseudo V8, and of course it's a 4-cylinder, but it's a diesel, so it's very low revving, and somehow it sounds like half a big American V8 because of the sound coming inside. You get that kind of a sound, so it kind of sounds like a old American V8. Throttle response is really nice, but you do feel a little bit of that turbo lag. It's not completely negligible, but it won't really be a problem in most scenarios, because again, that 7-speed DSG ensures that you're in the right power band at all times, but it's not as reactive as the GTI or the GTE for sure. The steering is really great. You have so much control. It's very precise. The progressive rack means that the amount of steering and the front wheels increases the further you go into the steering lock. So the more input you provide, further on it reacts a lot more faster. Another thing that changes in the sport mode is the dynamic chassis control, so the DCC. In the sport mode, the suspension is a lot more firm, and it provides, the compression and the rebound is adjusted so that it tries to make the car as planted and keep it as flattened level as possible. Going through a little village, and in these little village streets, you do feel the bouncy, bumpy suspension in the sport mode a lot more prominently, but put it into comfort mode and you can feel a big change instantly. So yes, while the suspension is lower by 15 millimeters and it is a sporty hot hatch, in the comfort mode with the DCC, you get the best of both worlds. You're not really making a sacrifice. You don't feel that compromise. Brake pedal feel is also really nice. The differential at the front is not something really fancy. It's not a limited slip. It's still an electronic locking differential, which basically means it's a brake-based torque vectoring differential. So what happens is it will brake the inside wheel ever so slightly around corners if it needs to. So all said and done, this is a fantastic chassis. I mean, all Golf GTIs and GTEs and GTDs, I've driven the previous generation. I know this platform really well. I recently drove the Cupra Formentor, so this MQB platform is something that I'm very familiar with, and this is the throwing up no surprises, but that's a good thing in this case. You drive very spiritedly. You will definitely see numbers around 6.2 liters for 100 kilometers, maybe even 6.5. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. But if you drive with a light right foot and you make use of the suggestions that the car provides with its EcoSense kind of eco-suggestion system, where it will tell you, for example, if it knows that from 100 kilometers per hour the speed limit is going to be 50, we're coming up to a junction, it will tell you to lift off the accelerator, and then you can really get a lot better efficiency. Let's talk a little bit about the suspension. So the suspension, like I said, with the DCC, you have different modes, so it is fairly comfortable. To aid the comfort, I think these seats are also really good. There's plenty of support, there's a lot of adjustment, albeit manually, and they're very soft but supportive. Side bolstering is also pretty good. I'm not the slimmest person and I fit here very well. If you are somebody who is on the healthier side, the side bolsters might be a little bit intrusive, but on the whole, the seats are very comfortable. Sound insulation is also really nice. So of course in the sport mode, the engine sound is audible because it's designed to be, but there's very little in terms of wind noise or road noise. Even on the Autobahn at high speeds, it is very quiet in here. So NVH levels are definitely really good. Let's summarize this episode of the new Golf GTD. Prices start at around 39,000 euros, but when you add options like the IQ Matrix LED lights, the travel assist and the panoramic roof, you're looking at numbers very easily around 47,000 euros. Well, that's a little bit more expensive than the GTI, as is the case with most diesel engine options versus petrol engine options. That being said, it's a little bit cheaper than the GTE, and you still get that really nice torque from the low end. Not as much as the GTE, of course, but a little bit more than the GTI. So what did I like and what did I not like about the GTD? Well, first of all, the chassis and the steering are fantastic. Very agile, very capable, very nimble, and a lot of fun to drive. What I didn't like was the fact that the infotainment system would glitch out, especially the climate control, and the fact that the sliders are not backlit. I think for 47,000 euros, it can be very frustrating to have these problems as an owner. But what's the right version for you? Is it the GTI or the GTD or the GTE? In my opinion, the GTI is for the purist. The petrol engine that you can rev out really high with the manual transmission, that's where the real purists will enjoy themselves. For the GTE, if you have charging infrastructure at your house, then it's fantastic because you can plug it in overnight or on the weekends and you have plenty of electric boost to have that nice acceleration, but also you get a lot of tax benefits and so on. The GTD is for those who have a long commute on the Autobahn every day and you want that extra power, because that's where the car really shines. It's got plenty of torque and power for overtakes. 200 kilometers per hour is very composed and with no fuss at all, and you're not burning so much diesel. You get a lot of mileage as well. And when you want to have fun on twisty roads, that chassis comes into its own. Therefore, I think if running costs are going to be an issue for you and you're going to be spending a lot of time on the Autobahn, the GTD might just be the one for you. That's my verdict. Let me know what you think. Put it down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.